Looking at a place or what?
I stopped until he flipped the red button.
I didn't say that to him.
Oh, you're saying.
I'm saying it to myself. So why you?
I don't even know if that's pure
Why you
secret.
I said, you know what? Let's see.
Yeah, just
And I see that's where
Do,
that's
do, do.
where he uses it. So
Just wait for it again.
hey. Well,
if he said it's cheaper,
it would have been.
Hello. I'm good, thank you.
Well,
My bad.
I just thought that.
so
Illegal? I think it's legal, but,
oh,
yes, I saw that.
I
They school you?
how do you find that on
Yeah,
here? What's it
you
called?
know,
I can't do that on mine.
because you'd have to probably ask Michael to see what his thoughts on that.
No. The city
There's
email.
nothing
I can't find. I can never. I
How are
tried.
you?
Sir, that you invited Chief Heiser over to participate.
What?
I did, and he
Click on, no,
declined.
right there.
Yes.
We didn't say that.
Oh.
Yeah, we invited him over, and he is at the Chiefs conference. Just gets back, I think, on Wednesday, and he's,
Oh, no, I will not.
schedule is pretty jammed. Yeah, I would
Loading it
have
up.
liked to have had him.
Loading.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'll just tell you the truth.
Have you heard anything from Scott?
Ooh, it's almost 6 o'clock. I
Down
need
to
to
Chiefs conference.
Yeah.
Is that in Springfield?
Peoria,
Peoria, there you go.
You know, I ain't even.
I haven't in Peoria.
probably Paradise.
Okay.
I was there, I wasn't impressed. You ever been there?
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
We had a conference right across the hall,
You brought all those leaders.
it's all everything jammed on top of
Awesome.
it.
There you go.
Yeah, that sounds good, but
I hear what you're saying.
man, see, but look, see, hold on, not to change this, but it's still low.
Yeah, we ended up, we
Yeah,
got
that shouldn't.
Tim Shipman,
Hi, Megatha, how are you?
chief down at Dixon Fire,
Yeah.
and then we've got a
Well,
division
It
chief.
was gone wild, was it? No.
Yeah, Al was my first call. Oh man, he says I'm gonna be gone all the week up until then.
I don't know why yours isn't
We
loaded.
got a big meeting coming up, he's gonna have 4 vacancies real
Well,
soon.
I think.
He only has 6 people, so we have to have a whole bunch of meetings to try to get him some people.
Memory serves me correct. I think the first time I met
Oh, the
Al,
postal police were looking to.
he was humping shingles for Carlson Distributing, and I was nailing him on it. Yeah.
Wow.
But he looks like him, but he's not,
Well,
he's
does.
You
yeah.
not a football player.
Wednesday or
I
Thursday?
asked him about that the other day.
Al's a-
Hey, Beta,
No, you're on 20 and I pulled. And I was
he goes
City Road.
Not my fight.
So check with him and see if he used to work at
Guess as
Carlson.
I
Yeah,
mentioned,
that's
I
what-
started hitting this way.
I'm pretty sure he did, right?
We have our regular meeting.
I was in my work.
Oh, all right.
You're
Yeah.
probably saying,
Animal control issue.
I'm going home.
Email. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I can't complain. It wasn't good.
You want to know?
No.
We are up.
Hey, are you playing?
Yes, we are. That is very true.
I'm mine.
I mean, we got things to do.
If you're gonna
I'm
play, I'm gonna
old.
play. I'm
Got to go to work in the
But,
morning.
I mean,
Hey.
fun.
I told the guys, man, I'm just
Joke you not.
basket and play like a force. I don't know where we're going. Come in up against your elbows. Oh, man, my knees are so
Too long to respond.
So it should be a short meeting.
Score! Even better.
Well, I don't know. I called Mac and I said, he said, the owner did it. I go, no, so I sent it out.
Your beep is
people. I mean, you know, it is what it is. I'm not sure. Last year's
I don't said it, but I'm all for it.
yeah, they move it around.
Oh, man.
He's gonna take a few minutes.
Oh, golly. I just had to do that.
I don't know, you probably got one of these.
Oh,
Thing they did a few weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. that would-
Just come to expect it from.
And Jody, you ought to see when I go to your shop and we get to going.
Don't think that.
not really.
So we,
Oh,
Did you see what I did? 'Cause I,
See, my things are, some of the stuff they got no numbers or something, and everything else. You know, the main thing, like I said, the little people especially said with all the
And the neighbor, he stopped up, said he gave
dispatches and stuff was,
Matt some good news today.
you know,
At this time, the chair will recognize invocation before our committee of the whole meeting.
You know, we pray together like this each time before a city council meeting because we totally believe that we serve a God so sovereign and so powerful that he can change things when we ask him. So I want to read tonight from Jeremiah 29, beginning with verse 12. Then you will call upon me, says our mighty God, and you will go and pray to me, and I'll listen to you. And you will seek me, and you will find me when you search for me with all your heart. Then I will be found by you. And we do tonight, Father. We just search for you with all of our heart because you're the answer. You're the answer to every question that comes up tonight. You're the answer for every problem in every office, every place of government. You even know exactly who's going to be here next year. You know who's going to be sitting in these chairs next year and who is not. You know everything, Lord. And so we just give this city council meeting to you tonight to have sovereign reign over everything that is decided. Because we don't have enough wisdom to figure this out. But you do, Lord. You know everything that goes on. So you, Father, we're asking to give us the answers to the questions. And we continually, Lord, together agree and pray safety over our city. Safety over our policemen, safety in our neighborhoods. And we still continue to pray that there is going to be no murders in this city. This city is going to be murder-free. And we even agree with our chief of police that he is going to round up all the heroin dealers. We agree with him that you're going to uncover the secret things. You're going to show him the places where all of this can be found. And you are going to break, Father, this silent code over the people that doesn't tell anything. We're breaking it now in the name of Jesus Christ and releasing and decreeing that when there are things that are seen that are wrong, that the people will report it. And we thank you in advance, Father. You care about this city and love this city so much that you want us to prosper. So, Lord, prosper us tonight with your presence. In Jesus Christ's name, we all agree. Amen.
amen.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will call this October 11th Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Gitz,
Here.
Alderperson Clem,
Here,
McClanathan,
here.
Ross,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Busker,
Here.
Brashaw,
Here.
Keister, Chesney.
Here.
Alderperson Chesney, would you please lead us in the pledge? Alderman Chesney, your meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
There's no one signed on the sheet tonight.
Seeing none, item 5 is the approval of minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderperson Bradshaw, seconded by Alderperson Ross. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 6 was the presentation for the Westport Village. Mayor, it's my understanding that this needs to reschedule.
That's what Madam Clerk learned this afternoon. Meg, do you have any update?
Yes, I had a conversation this morning from Carrie Freydig, and she sounded like they were ready to go, and then this afternoon called to say that they were both not able to make it tonight. So she would like to reschedule.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on item 6 before we move forward?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman McClanahan.
thank you. Madam Chair, did they indicate that they could present at our meeting next week?
I didn't talk to her about next week, but I could call her tomorrow and see if that works.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Absolutely.
I'd like to have that presentation next week if it works for the parties.
Understood. Seeing no objection, I think we will plan on a presentation for this coming Monday. All right. Item number 7 is the presentation on the next generation 911 system. Mr. Joe Geider.
I'm just gonna introduce him is all.
Oh, very good.
Hi, I'm not going to give the presentation. No, that's fine, Joe. I just wanted to introduce Joe Geider. Joe Geider has been around for a long time. He's forgotten probably more about 911 than most of us in this room will probably know. Joe is the chairman of the board on the 911. He's going to be talking about, with all this talk about next generation and 911, what's it all mean? What's this technology mean? So Joe is going to give this presentation, just kind of explain some things. He's not going to talk about the consolidation. We've got some plans for that, and we got some meetings set up. So I invite any kind of questions to Joe. If anybody's here that can to answer those questions, Joe will be the guy. Also in the audience tonight is June Dillman, and June is the 911 coordinator that's located in our building for the Stevenson County. And then also next to her is Alex McIlvaney. How you doing, Alex? She's my systems administrator. So they're in the house as well. So I'll turn it over to Joe. Joe, do you need any help with the clicker, or you're good to go?
I'd like to sit because I have to.
Okay, that'd be fine.
I'm not a professional.
Oh, sure. Come on up, Joe.
That's okay.
All right.
Does that work? Does everybody hear that okay? All right. Just a little of my history. The chief didn't go into this, but in 1991, I owned a company called State Line Communications, and we were the equipment vendor for the 911 system when it was put in. The system went online in 1992 in March, so it has been around for some time already. The step we're taking now takes us from the analog manual system to a digitally controlled system. I'm going to try to walk you through this. I'm not going to get real technical. I'm going to just try to walk through what we have now and where we're going. This is what we're using right now. Wireline phones, in other words, a phone that hangs on the wall in your house. There's approximately 8,000 of them left in this county. It provides the callback number, so if we lose the call, we can call a person back. And it provides the address that the phone bill goes to. Not necessarily where the phone is, but where the phone bill goes to. If you look at cell phones, there's about 35,000. We never know exactly. It gives you the carrier like Verizon or US Cellular and the tower the signal's coming in on. It also gives you an approximate location based on XY and or GPS. The accuracy's not real great, but it does give you a location. We normally, if somebody's outside with their phone, standing still, we can usually find them within a few hundred feet. When you're in a building like we are here, not so good. And then there's voice over IP, which basically works the same way as the regular landline phone. It goes to the existing network, provides callback number, and a registered address. If I do voice over IP, there's a registered address in the device that I'm using. That gives me the location. The challenges we have today, there's many more types of mobile devices. I bet everybody here has got one on their belt or in their purse or somewhere. The equipment we're using today is old, it's hardware-based equipment, and it really needs to be replaced. We have location issues, like I talked about. Roughly 70% of the phones are located correctly, the rest we have to hunt. And we also need interoperability with other agencies, like other departments, Winnebago County, Joe Davis County, Carroll County. The way we interoperate today is we dial them a 7-digit number and say, hey, we got a call that belongs to you here. We can't send any information to them. And then, of course, the open architecture tells you that we want to be able to add different things as it comes along. New devices, new things, we want to be able to add that in and not have to change the whole system to do it. So this is what we'd like to have. We'd like to have, and the bold letters here at the end tell the whole story. anytime, anywhere, from any device. That's how I want to get a hold of 911. I don't think we're going to be able to do the cans with the string down the lower right corner, but we can work on that. The old system was based on wires, copper wires, and hard lines. So there's really difficult to make a change or an upgrade. The new technologies are mostly all digital technologies, and we need to have that plug-and-play access. We have to be able to adapt to the new systems as they come in, and it's going to be a very data-rich environment. Everybody knows that. Cell phones used to be, how do you talk to somebody? How many minutes of talk time do you get? Now what do they ask you? How much data are you going to use? That's what you're paying for. So that's where we're going with it. It has to be more flexible, so it's easier to change depending on what new products we get. Has to interoperate again with other services. We hope, and our contract that we have signed at this point is going to be less money than what we are paying now for actually better service. The new and calling devices is the problem. Text messaging, instant messaging, small systems messaging, personal data systems, any kind of non-voice communications. Today, we can't take any of that. Nothing. The only thing we can take is a voice call. That's it. If you look at the wireless, Wi-Fi, same thing. We cannot take that. And the new cell phones now, they do cellular, but if there is a Wi-Fi connection available, they will automatically switch to Wi-Fi and make the call over that to reduce the load on the cell sites. And of course, you can add a lot of more things, environmental sensors, alarms, video is another thing that we cannot do. The new system will have that ability. And just a scenario we could use with video. Let's say that US Bank over here gets a robbery and they set the alarm off. When the alarm goes off, we get access to the cameras in the bank, and I can look and see what's going on in the bank before I even send an officer over there. We know what's happening. Things like that will be available in the future. And it's, as it is now, we have no chance of doing that. So, the wide spectrum of users allows deaf people, hard of hearing, to be able to type messages. If it's non-English speaking, we can send that to somebody that either speaks Spanish or whatever. So we can handle those calls better. We do not have the ability to do any of that right now. What we really want to do is we want to replace what we have now so that it does exactly what we have. We don't want to lose anything in this process. We want to add capabilities to change to new types of originating service providers. And that's the big thing. Who would have thought 30 years ago that everybody's going to have a cell phone in their pocket? I mean, nobody. You had a good guy, really rich guy, had a mobile phone in his car, and that's all there was. Now everybody's got a cell phone. So flexibility, again, is the thing to be able to take different products and different services and get them into the 911 center. And we want to be able, again, interoperate with the outlying agencies. So that will connect us to the counties around us. Kind of what it's made up of, and I guess you can read this. I can go over it if you want, but we want to get calls and message services. We want to take calls from non-voice devices, which we cannot do now. Integrate additional data, for instance, mapping, something like that. Call comes up, we can get locations, get a nice map, or maybe information about the caller. They have the heart problem, they have epilepsy, something like that could also be supplied. And also be able to transfer those calls to somebody else. Now, for us to take a 911 call, we dispatch a fire department, and they get whatever the dispatcher tells them is going on. With Next Generation in the future, we'll be able to send them a map. On that map will be the pathway to get to where the fire is, and if there's a 5-ton bridge that says you can't go down this road, you have to go around. Those kind of things are coming. Again, that's Next Generation stuff. So, how's it put together? It's IP network. Ours is going to be entirely fiber-based. There will be no copper wires except for the last 5 feet of the system. International standards, it's going to be Internet Protocol standards. So we're not talking about a specialized product here. We're talking about something that everybody uses. It's all software, it's all databases and data management, and of course security is a must. And this is kind of the key to Next Generation. What we have now is very system specific and it's very proprietary stuff. Next Generation is going to go over and buy a computer off the shelf and it'll work. Does not use specific hardware or software. Software driven, controlled basically by databases, routes calls, messages based on multiple factors. More flexibility, and that's the whole idea. The idea is to get to the situation when the new product comes out that we can integrate that into 911 without spending a ton of money to do it. That we can take that new product, get into a digital format and bring it into the 911 center and handle it. We can also send things along, like the building, what floor the building on, what the building layout looks like. I'm sure the fire department would love to see that kind of stuff come in. So. Alternate routing. Let's say we have an incident and for some reason or another, the city police department goes down, goes off, quits working. Building has to be evacuated. Somebody firebombed it, I don't know. What the alternate routing is that now, for us to alternate routing, we have to call the phone company. They go down to the office. They work their magic for 24 or 36 hours, and then they finally get the call going someplace else. With the next generation, about a 10 to 15 minute changeover to send it somewhere else. Send it to Joe Davis County, send it to Carroll County, somebody that can back us up. We can also predefine that. If something major happens, we can say, well, if the city goes off, we're going to send the calls here. The county goes off, send the calls here. So we can actually control that ahead of time instead of having to do it on the fly. Inter-network access to the other PSAPs, the personal public safety answering points. For instance, now, when we transfer a call, we just call them on a 7-digit number. Once next generation's in place, we get a 911 call and it happens to be on the line. It's in Joe Davis County, for instance. We just send that call right to Joe Davis. They get all the caller's information, they get all location information, they get everything we got right on their screen, just like that they got it, just as if the call went to them directly. Another advantage to next generation. The inter-network access to other databases allows us to access other people's maps, other people's layers of roads and that kind of stuff that we could access and see what's going on when a car, for instance, we're doing a chase and we're running out of the county. And it is going to be less money because, I don't know if everybody knows here or not, but we have went together with 10 other counties. It's 11 counties total that are buying the mainframes for this system, and we will be a part of that 11 county group. So the cost for us to do this is substantially less. The way it is now, each PSAP has to do it on their own. They have to do their own setup, their own wiring, their own trunk lines. We will do this as a group, 10 of 11 of us together. So it will be less money. I went through this really quick. I maybe didn't cover all the points, but I didn't want to get real technical with this, but anybody got any questions? What's going on? It's a big step for us. It really is.
Are there any questions for Mr. Geider?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman McClanahan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Geider, for the presentation. What's the time frame that you're looking at for the transition with the
Third
next
quarter
generation?
next year.
Thank you.
That's what we've been given as a target. So.
All right. Any additional questions?
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
thank you. I had a question on the updates. Do you generally plan on having updates like quarterly, yearly? With this kind of technology, I'm assuming there'll be a lot of changes that happen.
Yes. The vendor, we have updates almost monthly. They'll be updating the software regularly. If you're talking about addressing and that kind of stuff, that can be a daily thing. Somebody says, I'm going to build a house at such and such a place. That has to be added to the system. So, in fact, you could actually go into the system and making updates every day, depending on what's going on in the county.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. On the location of the cellular devices, the satellite imaging and the satellite tracking, that'll work a lot better with this?
What happens now when we ask for a position for a location, the call comes in, we get an initial location sometimes, not all the time. And you hit what's called a rebid button. And the system goes out and asks the phone where it's at again. Again, sometimes we get a reply, sometimes we don't. The next generation system.
That's training need by the dispatchers.
Yes, there will be. And that will be, the bill for that will be footed by 911. The handling the text messages and that kind of stuff is going to be very different than a phone call. So yes, there will be training.
Follow up.
Alderman Ross.
Now, when you say you'll be able to 911 call that comes in that needs to go to Joe Davis County, that would be like a similar call forwarding, correct?
It's better than call forwarding because I'm sending the map location, I'm sending the guy's name, I'm sending the guy's phone number. I'm sending all that rather than just a call forward where he just gets to talk to the guy. I'm sending all the information I get, location, everything, they will get right from me.
Mr. Mayor.
First of all, thank you for coming tonight. A couple of questions. I've heard varying timetables about the rollout of this technology, but the impression I've gathered is it's going to roll out over several years. Can you kind of lay out what you see as phase one and the subsequent phases, and the timetable for their implementation?
I'm not sure I can follow the question you're asking. When we come online with Next Generation, we will have all the things that we have now, plus better location, plus text messaging, plus the ability to do video all in one day. When that comes on, that will all be there. Anything additional, in other words, a new product comes out that works differently, then yes, there'll be some time frame for that. But once we come on, we should have all that at our fingertips.
Do you see the same structure of 911 being maintained in place then to coordinate this?
Can you elaborate on that question? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do we have the structure we need right now in terms of the board and who's involved and the skill sets that they bring to make this all happen seamlessly?
Yes, we do.
Do you see the cost structure changing for the better when we...
Alderman Chesney?
Alderman Clem.
I'd just like to thank June and Alex and all the troops over at the Freeport PD, Todd for letting me in to sit there, and over at the county. One thing you realize real quick is, first thing to keep in mind is they do more than 911. So if you think this is all they do, they have other duties that they perform besides this, and perform them very well. With about 5 screens sitting in front of them to do all this. And the way it is set up, and as Joe mentioned, the voice over internet all goes to county, the other comes to city, and they transfer back and forth, but there are 2 complete different setups at both places. You know, initially, as you look at it, same equipment, but the working capabilities and the way each of them are handled are differently. So, you know, I think it'll be an excellent thing as we move forward, and Joe, as you can see, obviously has a handle on it, and we need to make sure the first thing is that it's still, as Joe mentioned, first is safe. You know, that we still got everything we start with now and more. Can we do the same job? Is it financially, are we financially able to do it? And is everything in line equipment-wise to make sure that we can add on and keep going in the future? So.
Chair?
Sure. Mr. Geider.
The reason Stevenson County ended up with 2 places, and you have to go back into the 90s to get this, but the reason there's 2 spots in Stevenson County, Joe Davis County doesn't have 2, many of the counties around us doesn't have more than 1. When Stevenson County came online, we were one of the first around here that had 911. We had no place for a backup. The Illinois Commerce Commission mandates that you must have a backup location. If one quits, the other one has to be running. The idea is you never are off altogether. So we got this, the setup in the city all ready to go. And again, I was a vendor at this time, and they applied for an operating license, and they said, well, who's your backup? We have to have a backup. Hence, the county became the backup. And even having it there required a waiver because that building is too close to the city building. But we got it done, so that let us go on. That's why there's 2 places. When we started out, we had to do that.
Alderman Chesney?
I think Alderperson Miller is first, then I'll recognize Alderman Clem.
Yeah, during this implementation, do you see that both 2 systems have to be running then?
Absolutely.
For how long?
That's up to the Illinois Commerce Commission. I expect 30 to 60 days. I hope it's no longer than that. The Commerce Commission and the State Police of Illinois are the regulators for 911, and they call the shots when it comes to that stuff. But yes, we will run parallel for some period of time.
Alderman Clem.
Keep in mind, one thing that was brought up at the seminar I went to at IML was the fact that we take 911 for granted. There's, 11 counties that don't have it yet?
That's right.
I believe, in the state of Illinois. So when they talked about grants and where monies were going to go and how things were going to change, your main emphasis is to get 11 counties up and running.
Going down there first. Yeah. The mandate is to have 911, everybody's phone be able to dial 911 in the state of Illinois, and the money's going to go there till that's done. You're right, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Good point. Hard to imagine that there's counties that don't have 911, isn't it?
It is. Are there any final comments for Mr. Geider? We certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to come see us, and we look forward to your recommendations and presentation at a later time. So, thanks. Okay. Item number 9 is the presentation on job duties of the city treasurer bus.
You missed number 8.
Oh, the presentation on developing an application for the abandoned property grant program. Mr. Mills and Ms. McDonald.
I think Grants Coordinator Nancy McDonald has a brief PowerPoint presentation to go through.
About an hour and a half,
There you go.
So you cut it down.
And then after that, we can take any
All right, the
questions.
Cubs game.
You get 3 minutes.
I'm sitting up there last night at 12:30 watching the game, saying, what for? I don't watch it any other time.
Well, thank you, everyone, for allowing us to come here and give you a little, can you hear me okay? To give you a little overview of the Abandoned Properties Program in preparation of our proposed resolution on Monday to submit an application under this program. Yep. The Abandoned Properties Program is a program offered through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, or IDA. They get the money through foreclosures. It's a fee that's paid by lending institutions for foreclosures, and it's collected in the counties that they're paid. Round 1 was awarded in 2013 to the city, and we received $25,000, and we demolished 4 abandoned residential properties with that funding. Yeah, if you want to, that'd be great. It's expected moving forward that there will be a grant cycle each and every year, as long as there are funds available. Municipalities are eligible to apply. It's a little different than, say, our blight reduction program that we're operating right now. We have 2 different rounds, and that we have to partner with a nonprofit. So we're the applicant with it. There's a maximum grant award of $75,000. However, we can ask for up to $250,000 with a waiver, and we plan to do that. There's a few criteria that come into play if we want to ask for a waiver. It's, has to do with how the municipality is doing, the effect the abandoned properties have on the city itself, and some other, different criteria. But I think we can certainly make a case in our proposal to ask for the higher amount, and the proposal is due at the 3rd week of October. This is a sad this is a sad slide. Even though there's 15 million available, we're not located in Chicago or Cook County, so that's 55% right there that's taken off the top, and then another 30% is allocated to the collar counties. Now, the remaining 15% is divided between the rest of the state. However, that's still 2.3 million, and here's the great thing is we, as I mentioned, we have 2 rounds of the blight reduction program that's offered through IDA, and we're successfully administrating that. In fact, I think we're kind of rocking with it, right, Alex? And then we also had the 1 round of the abandoned properties program. So we've demonstrated that, we're capable, we know what we're doing, and we're making a difference. Matching funds, this is the even better part. No matching up to $75,000. Now, there's a 1-to-1 match if we request the higher amount, but here's the even more cool thing. Because we have the blight reduction program funding already, there's not going to be $1 extra of city funds coming out. We can actually use the blight reduction fund program funds as a match, and that's what we intend to do. Let's see, eligible activities, demolition of abandoned residential properties. And we must have legal authority, of course, to demolish those buildings. It could be maybe we haven't been able to get a hold of a property owner and they have extensive issues with their property. We can also use it to rehab exteriors to address safety concerns, maybe board up a building or tarp something up just temporarily till we can demolish it, fencing off an area, or even mowing or pest control. I mean, mowing, what did we talk about, 15,000 last year for mowing, so maybe we can use some of these funds for, offset our mowing expenses over the year. Eligible properties are 1 to 6 unit residential properties, again, no commercial. Property program must meet rules for abandoned. So we haven't been able to get a hold of property owners. It's a blight, and it's a vacant. And believe it or not, we can actually include manufactured homes in this program. And it's okay if the properties have garages, outbuildings, sheds, and so forth. Those can be included in the demolition. Ineligible properties would be residential properties where there's people living there, historically registered properties, commercial, industrial, and then also mixed use, where it might be like a commercial and then might have a little residential, floor. We can't do those kind of properties in this program. So our focus, as I mentioned, is the demolition of abandoned properties, actually abandoned residential properties that are ineligible for the blight reduction program. As I mentioned, we have 2 rounds of that we're working off of right now, and there's just some things that just don't, some properties that just don't fit into that particular program. One of the other things we wanted to mention too, with the blight reduction program, we actually have to partner with a nonprofit. With this, we're the applicant and we're the ones leading the charge. So it gives us a little more control over which properties we choose and how we choose to demolish them. And the focus also we want to mention, it's not just going to be in one particular area. We've identified a couple different properties. We haven't quite honed in on all the properties yet. We expect to demolish anywhere from 20 to maybe 30 properties. But we see some property or some neighborhoods like, is it Clark Douglas or Douglas Clark? And the arcade neighborhoods might have 1 or 2 kind of loose ends hanging out there, so 1 or 2 properties that aren't so great that really need to go. And then there might be some in the floodplains and on the east side. Oh, and I should mention too, there might be some within the city of Freeport that is owned by the Stevenson County Tax Trustee. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. You had indicated that some of the properties that are not eligible for BRP might be targeted for this. Are there any location restrictions to this grant, such as you have with BRP?
Nope. But I probably would say the thing that we need to focus on is we have some revitalization plans, so we want to make sure that we're kind of following the plans we've set forth.
Thank you. The second question, follow-up, Mr. Chair? Thank you. When you're talking about the amount, is it an all or nothing? Like if we either go for we do the waiver and go for 250, and we either get 250 or nothing, or are they free to say, well, thanks, but we'll give you 125? Is there any reason not to go for the waiver? I guess is what I'm saying.
I think we need to go for the gusto and go for the waiver. If they can certainly come back and say, here's 25,000. That's actually what happened in the first round.
Okay.
We had requested a waiver, and whether, I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but we received 25,000.
So not all or nothing.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, ma'am, what happens with the property once the home is demolished?
Well, we certainly green it up. We are going to have some conversations about where we want to go with it, whether it's creating some other type of park features, or maybe it's part of a bigger project. Does that answer your question?
Well, not really, but I mean, would the property ever come up for sale, or would they, basically, what would they do with the property once it's?
Alex, why don't I defer to you?
Sure. So for some of these that have been abandoned, what we would then need to work out is there are some properties where the owners are deceased, for example, and they have tax exemptions that aren't requiring them to pay taxes each year, so they can never move on to the tax sale. Essentially, they're kind of stuck in limbo. The owners aren't around, and property can't go to anybody else. So what we would intend to do is, once demolitions take place, we're going to start cleaning those things up in conjunction with Stevenson County with the tax billing process, so that those things can then move on down the line. Some of these could be near BRP properties, so the nonprofits may choose to just buy them on their own. We'd also, of course, aggressively pursue side lot transfers to neighbors if there's a legal mechanism where that could happen, if the neighbor could buy it. But one of the keys would seem to be if it's abandoned and there's no owner around, got to at least figure out a way to get it into the tax sale, and then the neighbor could buy it there, for example.
Great, thank you.
Director Mills, side lot transfers, you know, we've demoed dozens and dozens of properties, and each property is unique in its own way. Without oversimplifying it, how many have we returned back to the tax rolls of the dozens that we've
Well,
we've demoed?
they still remain on the tax rolls. It's just the taxable value is much less because the home is gone. So in some instances, they've been bought through the tax sale by an adjacent neighbor. However, since we don't take ownership of those parcels, we don't always know, frankly, if the owner came back sometime and said that house is gone. You know, they could then turn to their next door neighbor and say, "We'd like to sell that to you for $1," and that's what happens. In the blight reduction program, the 11 that have been taken down in round 1 have been put into, the majority have been put into productive community uses, and I think some of those have sold to adjacent neighbors or will. I don't have a number on that, and I don't have the larger number either. I apologize.
Do we, so for the properties that we have disposed of, are we putting liens on these properties?
Yes.
Okay, and then are we taking legal action against these liens to put them in the hands of somebody that will pay taxes on them?
Yes. So, for example, when we fast-tracked things earlier this year, we've followed the laws that required you to file a lien within so many days, and that's on there. Now, the next question is, you know, can we get the neighbors to buy that one with all those lien amounts on it, or you know, does it need to be a separate conversation? We try to get them to buy it for what it costs us, but they may say you mow it.
Yeah, understood. Are there any additional questions? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Mayor, is this something that will be coming forward at the next meeting?
Yes, I just thank you for asking that question, because I was going to advise the council that we will be bringing the grant application to you next Monday for approval.
Very good, thank you. Now, item 9, the presentation of job duties of the city treasurer, Treasurer Buss.
Yes, contained in your packet was a report that I put together quite rapidly, actually. It was prepared because it was suggested that my position perhaps should go part-time. Keeping in mind my position is roughly 85% pension-related, and so all of my work is done behind the scenes. I'm not quite as visible as some of the other department heads, but about 85% of that is pension work. I'd like to refer to my cover memo. As I mentioned, the job duties are broken up into 3 different sections. The duties I perform for the city itself, as well as water and sewer. The duties I perform for the Freeport pension, or the Freeport Police Pension Fund, and those that I perform for the Fire Pension Fund. By statute, I am custodian of all of those funds, which combine for a total of $73 million currently. Also in the memo, I kind of wanted to describe what it is that I do, try to put it into perspective for you. I do for the pension boards what, for example, the city clerk does for the council. Prepare the agendas. I actually determine what the agenda items are, gather supporting documents, prepare the board packets, and then distribute those according to rules and regulations. I do for the active and retired pensioners what Deborah Milliman, the human resource manager, does for the city employees. I walk them through their retirement paperwork, legal documents, and assist them with their concerns and questions. I also do for the pensioners what the city accountant, our deputy city accountant, Michelle Richter, does for the city, preparing pension payrolls, book all receipts, book the expenditures, do all those journal entries, and I prepare federal year-end payroll returns, to name just a few. I also do for the pension funds what Gary Bernadelle, your finance director, does for you as the council, including balancing bank statements, booking investment returns, and producing the financial statements. I have put together it's actually about 9 pages worth of information for you to look over, the things that I'm currently doing. Much of what I do is driven by state or federal law, and specific deadlines are attached to many of the reports that are required. I'd like to say in 23 and a half years that I've done this job, I've not missed a single deadline. Now, if you make this position part-time, I fear that many of the filing deadlines won't be met. I don't want to think about what penalties might be assessed for either late or non-filing of federal or state documents. If you make this position part-time, I have no idea who you think might pick up the slack of those items. You can't pick and choose on all those lists. You can't pick and choose which ones are more important or ones you may think aren't necessary. They all need to be done. They all need to be done by someone. Everyone here, department heads and staff alike, are already over their heads with workloads. No one else can take on these duties currently. In addition, I would also like to say that for those of you who haven't served on the council for very long or know the history, my office used to have a full-time deputy and a part-time high school student. Those have both been stripped through the continual budget cuts that have gone on here for years. We have all been forced to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. It's not a new concept. You have the 3 lists in front of you. I won't bore everyone by reading all 9 pages, but if you have any questions about any of them, I'd be happy to discuss them. I do have a correction on the pension fund lists. It was an older list, and I just have the dollar amounts wrong. The police pension fund now totals $21.9 million. The fire is at $32.8 million. Those amounts are as of August 31st. And all of the other city funds total approximately $18.3 million, bringing the total to $73 million. So with that, I'd open it up for questions.
Questions for Treasurer Buss?
Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. Linda, excuse me, Mrs. Buss, I just want to thank you for all the work you put into getting this document to us that lists all your job duties. It's kind of overwhelming reading through it to see how much you actually do. And I also want to thank you when my husband and I stopped in your office one time to talk to you about a few things. And this is a few years ago. It's the only time I've been in your office. And you were buried in paperwork, yet you took time to answer our questions, and you were very professional. So thank you for your service to the city's report.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item number 10, which is the review of the draft ordinance establishing the compensation of the mayor, city clerk, the city treasurer, the city council by amending various sections of the codified ordinances. I will now open it up for additional discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
Just in going along with Mrs. Buss' presentation, the reason that I mentioned that last week about her position going to, the treasurer position going to part-time, was because of the comparisons that were given to us for the municipalities that are comparable in our size, that the majority of them are part-time positions. So I guess my next question maybe would be to you, Mayor, is there a possibility that between now and maybe next Monday, could there be a comparison of what those municipalities, like say Belvedere, that we used as a comparison, what actually are the responsibilities of that treasurer? Are they comparable to what Ms. Buss does now at part-time position? Or, you know, I guess it's kind of hard to make a apples to apples comparison without it, so.
The ability to carry this out would be dependent upon the schedule of the deputy clerk. So I'll talk to her the first thing in the morning. I think what you're going to find in most of these offices is they may have a part-time clerk or a part-time treasurer, but then they have a full-time support staff. So the difference is that I'm not aware of too many municipalities, unless they're much smaller, that have, for example, a single person up until recently doing all the things the city clerk does, vice versa with the treasurer. So the comparison, as you use the term apples to apples, is probably going to include how many people do they have working doing these functions. The second thing to keep in mind in making that comparison is that there are certain statutory duties that are carried out by the treasurer, but municipalities have some discretion as to how they distribute duties beyond that. So that also enters into the distribution of duties. So within those framework and constraints, we'll do our best to provide additional information.
My question for you, Mayor, is given your tenure with the city, do you see this as an elected position that should be altered, changed, looked at differently? You know, given the suggested cuts that have been proposed during various different times to police, fire, you know, without knowing exactly where we're going to fall with the referendum for city manager, you know, there's locked in costs with these decisions. Do you see this as perhaps a opportunity to look at this differently, or would your recommendation be, you know, following on the path that we've already taken?
There are different structures, and in some municipalities, the treasurer is an appointed, not an elected position. Now, that's a choice that the council can make as long as you follow the procedures in statute. My strong advice would be look at alternatives if you choose to, and look at all the different examples to pick and choose. I think that it is precarious to make a whole series of changes all at once. I mean, I don't think that any of us have a clear roadmap at this point. If the electorate decides to adopt a city manager form of government, all the transition that will take place. And there's lots of groups that are more than happy to do your thinking for you, but I think in the final analysis, the council is going to want to deal with a lot of those issues directly, albeit taking input. And so, you know, my offhand recommendation, since you asked the question, would be do one thing at a time and then see how it works and then make other adjustments. In addition, Attorney Phillips will advise you that some things require additional referendums for change. I'm not sure about this, but I don't believe that you can eliminate the treasurer's position, for example, and redistribute those functions without a referendum because there's a change in the form of government. But Attorney Phillips would be more versed on that issue than I would be. So I think you have a lot of different alternatives, and you have a lot of discretion and power. But I would be careful about how you sequence these things depending on how this referendum and election go, so that we maintain continuity. Anyone here that thinks that we're going to be able to make massive changes and then we're not going to need the same or maybe even additional staff, I think we're kidding ourselves. There's a certain level of staff that we have to decide to carry out the functions we have. And the only way out of that wilderness is, okay, maybe you make staff adjustments, but then you have to contract out. And sometimes that's less expensive and better, and sometimes it isn't. One size doesn't fit all. So my basic bottom line counsel is think very carefully about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and what the implications are going to be so that we can maintain continuity at all times.
Are there any comments as it relates to the treasurer's position? Attorney Phillips, did you want to weigh in on any, you know, the options and what they would look like? So
I have not recently looked at the statute, but from my memory, is to eliminate to change. I should say not to eliminate, to change the treasurer from elected to appointed. I believe requires a referendum, but I'd have to look at the statute before I say that for sure. That's what I go from memory, but I'm not sure without having a chance to look at the statute.
Alderman Chesney.
Alderman Clem.
Special Counsel Phillips, would if it went from full-time to part-time, would that require anything? I mean, as far as a referendum, or?
I'd have to look it up. I believe the referendum is limited to changing it to appointed as opposed to elective. Now, changing whether it's full-time or part-time, whether that constitutes a change of form of government, I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. I've never been asked to look into that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there interest with the council to explore a part-time opportunity, or do we want to refocus our efforts to setting the salaries for the elected officials noted on the agenda? So I would open it up just to give me some direction as to how we want to take this.
Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
Well, I think if it's possible to, like I asked earlier, if it's possible to look into those municipalities that have part-time and see if the duties are similar, I think that's really, how else can we make a decision? So if it's possible to do that quickly, I know we have a time frame here, so we need to be sensitive to that, so.
Mayor, with the allotted time, could you come up with some type of data points to give us a quick snapshot as to what it would look like for both a part and full-time, to the extent possible, with a few days' notice?
I can do that, providing that you don't mind getting material probably as late as Friday afternoon.
We're well conditioned. No, I'm kidding.
And I won't promise it's going to be as extensive as Diane's former missive, which I thought was well done. But we'll do as much as we can in the time we have.
Thank you very much. Moving on to a broader conversation regarding the compensation for the elected officials, I would open it up for comments, discussion. We do have to set the salaries relatively soon. I believe that our conversations in prior meetings were that we were going to set aside the mayor's salary until we found until we learned the results of the referendum. However, there seemed to be majority interest to set the salaries of the other elected officials beforehand. So I would open it up for comments as to what type of increases, if any, or cuts, if any, that we would make.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson McClanathan.
Thanks. I'll start with what hopefully is an easier one. My preference is, we'll start with the alderman position. I guess my preference on that would be no raise on that. I'm open to further suggestions, but I wouldn't be looking to increase that one.
If we were to focus on the alderman for just a second, so we can kind of get an idea what it would look like out of committee and in a ordinance form, do we have any comments, discussions as to what the salaries would be set for the upcoming elected officials for those that are seeking the aldermanic position? My just quick and brief comments would be that we would maintain the current salary and not offer any increases to the aldermen's salaries, but that would be my position.
You, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Clem.
You know that the senior alderman gets an increase. I'm just kidding. There hasn't been one for how many years? There's no sense in doing it now, you know. But are ours? I will ask the question though, because I was going through here and I think it listed in Freeport. It listed 8. Was it like $30-some hundred or something like that? And is it based upon a meeting? Is what it's based upon, or is it based upon a annual? Okay, thank you.
Attorney Phillips, we've commented on this in separate occasions regarding a potential penalty for non-attendance for aldermen. I'm not aware of any other elected official that has such a clause in the ordinance. There was also discussion that this could be seen as reducing an elected official's pay. Do you have any opinion as to if that language needs to be maintained in the ordinance, or if you'd feel more comfortable for it to be removed?
I've never researched the exact issue. I've always had questions in my own mind of whether forfeiting or pay for missing a meeting is a reduction in salary of compensation level, which would be prohibited by the Constitution. On the other hand, the issue is if you you can apply for an increase in salary during your term as long as it's set forth 180 days prior to the beginning of the term. So you can say year 1, 10,000, year 2, 11,000, year 3, 12,000. So you can go up. But this is a term that you wouldn't know how much they'd be receiving until after something would occur in the middle of the term. That's why I've always been concerned about it, but I've never been asked to render opinion on exactly whether that would be in violation of the constitutional provision that forbids a reduction or increase in compensation of an elected official during his or her term of office.
Alderman Clem, in your tenure on the city council, have we ever fined an alderperson for attendance purposes?
I don't think there was one fine. I know before I went on the council, I think there was one or two that might have had some issues on attendance, but since I've been on the council, I've been very fortunate that people that miss are very, very few, very few.
You know, for continuity and consistency, if, you know, all the elected offices don't, you know, we do have attendance policies, but it's incumbent on us to, you know, face our constituency, and I would think that we're all treated as growing up equally, and I don't know that that additional language is necessary. If it is, we should put it in for everybody, or it should be taken out for everybody, would be my view. Circling back to the compensation, is it general consensus that the compensation for the upcoming races for aldermen will remain the same? Understood. Okay. Moving on to the city clerk. I will open that up to the council for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
You know, Meg's been here for quite some time and has done a fabulous job, and I would say that if she was running again, I would think, you know, let's consider that. But we're talking about someone new coming on board, green, and giving him an automatic raise above what Meg makes now. I kind of have a problem with that. I would have to say that it should be frozen, or maybe even reduced. I don't know.
With elected officials, I come from just a slightly different angle, and I would agree with you that should be frozen, or there should be a very modest increase. I still maintain that the people that we represent, by and large, have not been receiving raises nearly to the extent of elected officials and government employees. And I think that when housing prices rise, when the job climate changes and things get better, I would find it to be a lot more digestible to the public that elected officials receive raises. But I think if there's anything that frustrates our constituency the most is when there's a separate set of rules. And I would say that until our constituents get a sizable raise in their own pockets, I would be hesitant to offer that to politicians, would be my thought.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Clem.
The only thing I would bring up and echo, and this is just a point of conversation while we're on it. Meg did bring up when she talked about leaving the position, about one of the things was to make sure that, or in the comments, to make sure that the person had the amount of money there that we could draw a quality person. And I always believe that. I think, you know, it might take a review of some of the other ones to see if that's right where we're at. But I guess if anything, I'd be in favor of freezing it more than reducing it.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
I would have to agree with you, Alderman Clem, just because in the comparisons that we were given, it's pretty right on target all the way across the comparables. So I would agree.
One comment that I would have that we don't mention very often is the overall total compensation package. And if you go to the 2015-2016 total compensation for employees over 75,000, you'll find that you know, virtually all of these elected positions, excluding the alderpersons, are well north of north of $100,000 in many cases. It's a little bit misleading. There's a lot of variables that come into play, and then there's also some long-term legacy costs, but they would be on the low end. I'm seeing about 77,000, and then the mayor's position is well north of 100,000 when you factor in all the other variables. circling back to the city clerk, is a consensus then in the will of the council that we would have a 0% increase?
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson McClanahan.
I suppose what I'm going to say here isn't too far off of what your position was, but I know inflation's kind of been low for the last couple of years. However, it is there's been some marginal inflation. I think maybe like a 0.5% increase over the term would at least you're not falling behind on that for the elected officials, as well as potentially what other municipalities are doing. So I'll just throw that number out there for discussion as well.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Busker.
Mr. McClanahan, are you talking 0.5% a year or just?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Meg has something she wants to say.
Madam Clerk, yeah.
We did do some calculations today. I'm assuming that you would like me to stay from May 1st to May 15th.
We would love you to stay from May 1st to May.
Okay. So we calculated out the salary for that to be $2,211.50. So that Attorney Phillips would need to write into the ordinance to pay for that time period for the 2 weeks. Otherwise, you're not going to have a city clerk, a city treasurer, or a mayor for 2 weeks. So consider that. That again was $2,211.50 for the salary for the city clerk. For the city treasurer, that amount is $2,157.85. And for the alderman, the $146.15. Just because of the inauguration date going to May 17th, or May 15th, 2017.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Clem.
This did happen before, and it is without a doubt one thing to keep in mind that does happen. I believe is it's set up that it's basically paid term to term, and when the term ends, guess what? The pay ends. Okay, so I believe last time when a mayor stayed 2 weeks and another one came in early, one of them didn't get paid, but I could be wrong.
Well, excuse me, can I? We did look at that. Mayor Garup was paid for 2 weeks, and then Mayor Gitz was paid for the additional 50 weeks after that. Okay?
Okay.
So, but the mayor itself was paid the allotted 86,000 whatever, and Dwayne Price paid it to the penny. So that
But you would.
the two people totaled what the mayor would be getting paid.
Good, but we do need to follow up and just make sure that that's changed, so all these are in place, and it's in one of the ordinances, so we do need to make that change, so everybody is paid the proper salary in between those 2 weeks.
Is it Alderperson Miller?
Yeah, I think that's only right that we put that in there. I mean, we wouldn't expect someone to work for nothing. But I guess I differ with Alderman McClanahan and still think that how many people in Freeport get an annual raise that are just, the blue collar worker? Not too many. So I'm thinking, my desire is to see it stay at a 0.
Could I make?
Of course.
I just want to make a statement, and God, you can shoot me if you want to. I may be out of line or whatever, but some point in time, we got to take a look at paying the person the proper amount to accomplish a job is the right thing to do. When I always say this statement, when I was in the Marine Corps, they told us we could do so much with so little for so long, we could do anything with nothing. And I think we're there. There's a certain point that, X number of people can only do so much. And if there's nothing there to enhance what they're doing, now, I'm not saying there should be 10% raises. I'm not saying anything like that. But I think it does defeat ourselves also to say that everything's going to just stay the same and we're going to get somebody to fill that position. Maybe if it was $1,000 more, maybe somebody else would apply for it. But I just think that we have to change the mentality just a hair to look at it in a more positive situation than to say, we're just gonna maintain status quo and the conversation and only pay what we have to. Not that we have an abundance of money to do things with, but I just think sometimes when you look that one of the things you hear, there's nothing going on in Freeport, blah, 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 you know, nobody's coming back, all that kind of stuff. Well, this is kind of one of the reasons nobody is coming back. You know, do the jobs actually pay what they should? Would you, and I'm just using an example here, you know, would you take Meg's job with a, well, now she has a full-time employee that works spread out among some areas and stuff, but, or would you go over to Belvedere maybe and take the job for X number of dollars that got a deputy chief, whatever, and so on and so forth? That's why I think, like the mayor mentioned, it is really hard to shift through some of these to see just exactly what all is intact in the position. You know, who is working, who is providing backup and that kind of stuff. But just another thought,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
It's a little bit awkward to talk about elected officials being one, but I want to speak particularly of the clerk and treasurer position. I think that there's a couple of things that are being overlooked. First, not everybody in Freeport is making no money, little money, or the same money. And I think that in fairness, if you look at comparable positions in other organizations, it's hard to make the discussion contention that the clerk position itself, let's put aside the incumbent, is, you know, a high-end job, well paid. But I also would urge you to take into account when you're deciding where to draw this line, what we expect of the person. No one has more public interface than a city clerk. And no one, I would argue, is more important to the day-to-day business of maintaining records than a city clerk. And we've had some people that were okay, but they weren't starling. And we've had ordinances in the past, way in the past, that were lost, records that were not kept, minutes that were not quite accurate. I think it's important to have a position that is attractive to qualified people to vie for. But in addition, when you say, we're going to freeze this, and we're going to freeze it for 4 years, we're not asking that of any other employee. And yes, this is an elected official, but they are also an employee. There are not too many positions in the city that actually, if you take into account step increases and you take into account all the other benefits, that make less money. If you're a beginning policeman, you're a beginning fireman, let's look at those positions, or public works. It's false to say, well, they get a 1.5% increase maybe in the contract. They also get step increases. When they're there for a period of time at the end of a couple of years, all of a sudden they get a major bump because we want them to stay. So why should a very key nerve center position in the city be treated as sort of an afterthought? Well, take whatever we're willing to give you, if you want qualified people. Let's also look at it from another point of view. If you say to this position, in year 2, 3, and 4, you don't even get a 1.5% increase, does anybody here believe that their bills are any less important to them than anyone else? The rate of inflation varies, but the rate of inflation is somewhere, the at least official rate of inflation is 1%. And frankly, this is one of the places that I side with the critics. If you go into the grocery store, you know doggone well that the rate of inflation is not 1% on food. It's not 1% on utilities. It's probably not even 1% on your cell phone bill or anything else that is a qualified need. So if the next city treasurer, or next city clerk is a family person and they're paying bills, especially if they're a single householder, do you think that they're just 3 years of oblivion? They get nothing? Now keep in mind that this person also doesn't get a lot of the other extra benefits of people. They don't get, you know, when they cash out of the position, a payout on their vacation or a payout on their sick days. They don't get any of the other benefits that we accord to people both by ordinance and also by labor agreement. So I'm not suggesting that we treat elected officials as some type of royalty or a special. I'm just simply saying, think carefully to not treat them as second-class citizens. Because when you say that a person, and you want a really good person, you want a top-notch person, and you want them to have a good command of technology, well, okay, who are you going to attract to the race? I don't want a warm body in that position. I want the best we can find, especially in the clerk's position and treasurer's position because of the nature of their responsibilities. And just as we don't expect any other one who plows the streets, is a fireman or a policeman, to work essentially for the same amount of money for 4 years, I think you ought to take careful note of what we expect of these people in these positions. And frankly, if these were appointed positions, I think we would treat them more like regular employees. But because they're elected officials, we kind of put them in a different category. Well, you've signed up for the position, so you take whatever we give you. Not sure that that's the best way to make public policy on this one. Maybe if you're starting with new people, it does make some sense to freeze it at the same salary now. But I'd urge you to think about years 2, 3, and 4, at least in some modest terms, before you pull the trigger on this one. Because they have bills to pay and families to maintain too.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
In no way was I trying to belittle Meg's position. I think she is very valued here, and we appreciate everything she does. So I hope she doesn't take that as anything personal, because that's not what it was. And I would agree with you, Mayor. Your last statement is totally what I was thinking. I really agree that it should be a frozen position with someone brand new coming in. And if the rest of the council wants to do a 0.5% on years 2, 3, 4, I wouldn't be opposed in that. I just thought, to start someone new, that was my thought.
Well, and, I think it's important to realize that there's no lease on these particular seats. These are elected positions. So while it's, for us to try to forecast who will hold these particular offices is premature. I think that, one thing that we've gotten away from is that elected officials, it's about not only service but also sacrifice. If somebody is taking any of these positions as career, these are politicians, right? I mean, they may not be highly charged political seats. However, in larger municipalities, they certainly are. I'm not suggesting that they should be, but these are elected officials. You can look at neighboring states. I mean, I can talk about during my time in college at Arizona, they pay the state legislature $25,000 a year. $25,000 a year to set policies for one of, a fairly large state in the union. So I think that we've looked in Illinois as these elected positions as careers, and I think that that's in part the problem. If somebody is coming to the city clerk's position, or the city treasurer's position, the mayor's position, and certainly alderman's position for a higher quality of life or some good pay, that is not the right reasons to run. I think that you run because you want to make a change, and you run because you feel like it's your calling. But I don't know that these should be seen as grocery getting type decisions. We don't know who the next city clerk is going to be. We don't know who the next treasurer is. The question is are we going to set a precedent amongst elected officials that they're going to continue to get raises? Or are we going to say that the city of Freeport generally isn't getting raises, and we think that the leadership of the city of Freeport should follow suit? And if we do, what does that look like? Is it 0.5? Is it 0? Where are we going to land on it?
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, when it comes down to it, if you want to freeze the first year, no problem. But I think if the person's progressing, doing a great job, you can go 0.5% on the second, 1%, another 1.5% on the third, and 2% on the fourth. As long as they're doing their job and doing everything right. Yes, it is an elected position. They can't get fired. But still, you got to look if you want more than a warm body. You want somebody that's going to respect the position and do the job. And that's more important than anything. That's it.
So I'm hearing that we have, in part, three proposals. We have a 0% increase that was suggested by Alderperson Miller. We have a 0.5% increase over 4 years that was suggested by Alderman McClanathan. And then Alderman Ross was 0%, 0.5, 1.5, and 2.
Yes.
Actually, that's not quite correct. I agree with the mayor on 0 to begin with, and then a half on 2, 3, and 4.
Half on 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Additional discussion. I think that we, Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Should we just refer this back for further discussion to the next council meeting?
Well, we can do whatever the will of the council is. I would just note that we're running out of meetings. We have one meeting on the 17th, and then that will put us into November. And if we're going to do it properly with 2 readings before the election, we probably should make a decision as to what we want to do with the increases so we can put it in ordinance form. I mean, my feeling would be is if we split the baby and Alderperson Miller's at, 0, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and Alderman McClanathan, you're at 0.5, I see it a little bit differently. Alderman Ross, I appreciate your comments, but I do believe that we need to maintain discipline as it relates to elected officials, and I think that serve and sacrifice should be first and foremost, the leading tenets of what somebody's calling. So, I mean, my view would be it would be between one of those 2 options, but I'm certainly open.
Chair,
Alderman Ross.
like I stated before, you want more than a warm body. And both treasurer and clerk do more than they're asked for. And that's more important than anything. You're running a city, not a small dress shop. So you have to remember that it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work involved. And you just have to go with it. I mean, you put in ungodly hours. A lot of work. That's it.
Is there any form of a motion to speed up this process?
Chair.
Alderman Busker.
I move we forward the 0, 5, 5, or 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5 onto the schedule for next week's discussion.
I would second that.
We have a motion by Alderperson Busker, a second by Alderperson Miller. And this would be to set the salary for just the clerk? Or is this for the clerk and then we're going to have additional discussion on the treasurer once we get information back? Is that the plan?
Alderperson Chesney, can I ask for clarification?
Sure.
Just because of the 2-week pay for carryover, is the intent of the council to have the 2 weeks paid and then the other 50 weeks paid out, the remainder?
I think so.
See what I'm saying? Or how do you want it? You want it so that
Mr. Chair.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. That's, as you just described, there is prior precedent, correct?
well, there wasn't really precedent for Treasurer Buss and myself because we were here, we worked.
Sure.
We got paid the same, it didn't matter. But for the precedent for the mayor, yes, that's true, 2 weeks and then 50 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking to
the way it
upset
went.
the apple cart on that. You know, the individual occupying the job paid for that period of time, and then
So actually what you'd be doing is subtracting off an amount off of the clerk's salary the first year
right.
for the time period for the making up the difference of the 2002 1150.
I think the intent, Madam Clerk, is that people are paid for the time that they're here, and as long as there isn't, any legal issues, I would think that, the will of the council would be is to appropriately compensate those during their time here. Attorney Phillips, is there any concern as it comes to the unique situation that we have as we have kind of that 2-week gap for paying elected officials?
Well, I think it's clear that you have to pay the elected officials for that 2-week gap. The question is how much you're gonna, is a separate and distinct question, is how much you're gonna pay the newly elected official thereafter, beginning when he or she is sworn in on May 15th, 2017. Those things are two separate, one, you can have a separate paragraph in the ordinance that says for this 15-day period, they get X amount of dollars, which is whatever the current rate of pay is, divided by 26 pay periods, and then you just set, and then you can just continue to set it as of May 15th, whatever the council desires to set. I mean, as long as you're paying somebody for the 15 days, you pretty much limited your liability and exposure from that.
Okay, and my understanding is there's consensus that we want to pay those 2 weeks, so we would want the language over a prorated amount. I think the motion that we have on the floor is for 0%, 0.5 for year 2, 0.5 for year 3, and 0.5 for year 4, and this is to set the salary for the city clerk. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for the recommendation to the full city council?
Alderperson Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
No.
McClathan,
Aye.
Ross,
No.
Miller,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw.
No.
Aye.
The vote was 4-3.
So the motion passes. Do we want to entertain any additional discussion as to the city treasurer's position, or do we want to hold off on that until we have the full council? Or until we have the data?
I would believe that, I would just think that you should have the data in that you're looking for as you do it.
Okay.
That's just my thought, but.
Is there any objection to that? Okay, we'll pick up the conversation on the city treasurer and have further discussion on that. So, is there any comments on item 10?
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson McClathan.
Thank you. As it pertains to the mayoral position, again, we're going to need some additional information. So whether, in whatever form that takes, as you indicated, time's running pretty quick on that to make an informed decision. One, obviously we want to have 2 options depending on the results. So that's the only thing I'd indicate there is we should probably get some further information on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson Miller.
so would it be wrong to put a whole other column in that scenario and have it make a decision on whatever the full-time would be, if that's the way the city votes on the 8th, and a column that has a part-time, and set those now so that we were ready? And my suggestion as far as the part-time position would be, I believe we should get input from the committee to change the form of government, simply because I believe that they have done extensive research on what salary comparisons would be. I mean, I don't know what a salary comparison would be for a part-time mayor. I mean, we could throw numbers out there, but I don't know what the right thing would be. So I would have to say that if we could possibly get some input from that committee, it might be helpful.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Clem.
I think it finally came out. God bless you, Jody. We should go to the committee that wants to change all our government and ask us what we should do. I've seen enough stuff from the Chamber of Commerce, the Stevenson County Visitors Bureau, X number of people that we do business with, and some of them get money from us, telling us how we should take and run our mayoral election and everything else. I believe the first thing that you gotta sit down and think here is, number one, what the hell's the new mayor gonna do? Is he gonna be here a day? Is he gonna be here 2 days? Is he gonna be here 3 days? Pretty hard to pay him $40,000 to be here 2 days. You know, I mean, to me, you're basically gonna have to come up with a job description of what is he gonna do. I think there's the main basic thing before you set any kind of, any kind of amount on that.
Mr. Chair?
Alderperson Miller.
Alderperson Clem, I do believe that that's set by state statute, what the job description would be for a city manager and a city mayor. I believe that's already in statute form.
No.
It's not?
That's negotiable. That's why it sometimes costs $150,000.
Yeah.
And they have buyout provisions.
She's talking about mayor then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you said city manager.
Duties, not
Du-
salary.
Right, duties. It's set by state statute, what the duties are.
I'm talking about the contract.
No.
No,
I apologize. It has limits on what their authority is. It lists certain authorities, but you can add to that as part of a contract.
Attorney Phillips, could you speak into the mic? We're having a little bit of trouble picking you up.
I apologize. I thought you said the city manager contract was in the, content was in the, state statutes. Well, you are correct when you said that there's certain duties and authority of the city manager, and how you implement that is up to the city council when you negotiate, if there's one chosen, negotiate one with that proposed city manager as to what actually he or she will do. But there's certain, like they have authority to appoint department heads. That's by statute. Which now it's the mayor, then it goes to the, but, so it would all depend on that situation.
So along.
Alderman Clem.
So along the same line, the mayor would have X number of duties that the mayor does, but it's a matter of how long is that mayor gonna work? I talked to a mayor at the Illinois Municipal League that was supposed to work, I think, either 16 or 22 hours a week. Told me how much more he put in than that. But you're gonna, everybody's come forward with all this wisdom to change everything in the world. It'd be awful nice to know what you got in mind to do. But remember, I'm the only guy against it, so I'm sorry.
Your position is clear.
Is that a salary recommendation?
I did not hear one, but I did hear a few comments as to Alderman Clem's position on city manager. Is there any further discussion regarding the compensation for the mayor's position? Is that something that we want to pick up at the next meeting? Is it something that we want to do in a special meeting shortly after the results? What's the will?
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
are we to come up with two compensations for mayor on the chance the referendum will pass and we'll have a city manager, so we'll have the part-time mayor? And then also a full-time mayor salary in case we have the full-time mayor. Is that what I'm to understand?
that was my point.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman McClellan.
I think we have to. We don't know what the results are gonna be, so we're gonna be on a very short, we gave ourselves a little breathing room by pushing the date back that we have to set it, but that was the whole idea of starting to discuss it now, so we don't get to November 9th and say, oh, okay, what are we gonna do, one way or the other?
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. As our last council meeting, when we were looking at these averages for part-time mayor, and I told you I pinpointed the 10 communities from the information that Meg Zaravel had given us of the communities closest to us in population and part-time mayor salaries, I came up with a part-time mayor salary of approximately $27,000. My understanding is that would be anywhere between 16 and 25 hours a week. There again, it's a give and take. As Alderman Clem pointed out, you can't ever guess how many hours. As an alderman, I can put in 40 hours a week some weeks and get my same paycheck of $259 a month, or I can work 5 hours a week on a real easy week and just have a meeting and not have to do a lot and not get a lot of calls. So I think a part-time mayor would be kind of the same thing. As far as some weeks he would have a lot of call on him and or her, I'm sorry. And then some weeks there would be a huge amount of time to put in. With that being said, I think a part-time salary anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000 a year would be something we'd probably be looking at. That's just my opinion.
Is there any additional comments, or what is the will of the council? Do we want to go ahead and start moving this in ordinance form as a full-time and part-time mayor so we can start to get this structured with the understanding that we won't take action on this until after the referendum is set, or how do we want to do that? Alderman Busker.
I would think that that would be the best way to do it, have Plan A or Plan B ready to go as soon as we know at the end of the election. Need to have both ordinances drawn up, whether or not we vote for one or the other.
Let's start with Tom's favorite topic, the part-time mayor. So if there could, I will open that up for discussion as to what the salary should be set for the part-time mayor.
I haven't got my slips out yet on it. But seriously now, let's talk about this. Here's one of the times I think where the majority of a quorum really hurts. Because it would be real easy for 2-3 people to sit down, take a look at some stuff and say, hey, here's really what we should do. Now there's no way you can go to the clerk that you're already asking for to compare the treasurer thing to that to go get it. I'm sure there's some things in place, but I really believe the magic thing is, the less in all theory the mayor is going to do, the more the city administrator is going to do, which is going to raise a price tremendously in the deal. Does that, and maybe it would be a time, and we could ask, Mr. Mayor, were you an administrator? And there was a part-time mayor then? Could I ask if we could kind of fill in on duties of what?
Mr. Mayor.
The question was, what was the distribution of duties?
Yeah,
Well, I'm happy to answer that question and share it with you, but keep in mind that the administrative option is different than what's being posed to the public, okay? I mean, this community in Wisconsin had a part-time mayor, and it's about 6,000 or 7,000 people. They paid him, I think, $10,000. And the administrator, and by comparison, made $75,000. So the mayor, however, had appointment power, both in terms of council committees, appointed all other committees, and essentially worked with the council on policy. The administrator's duties were operational. We passed this ordinance, implement it. We want this policy initiative on roundabouts implemented, go do it. We have this issue with the Department of Corrections, go solve it. So it's operational. Now, in the city manager form, that shifts a little bit, and it may influence your perception or your thoughts about what you want the mayor to do and what the role there is. Here's my take on it from watching this up close and personal for a long time, but keep in mind that I was not a city manager. If this referendum is approved, the city manager, whoever that is selected, will become the chief executive officer of the city. They will appoint the mayor and all department heads. They will make the appointments to committees. They will assume executive functions. The mayor will become a member of the council. Now, the mayor, and frequently in cities with city manager form of government, not only has ceremonial power, but has, I guess, what you would call persuasive power. So it's not at all unusual for the mayor to have an initiative. Let's say the mayor says, okay, I want demolitions to be followed by some type of a city plan for those lots. So he can suggest that to the council. He can suggest that, or she, to the city manager. But the council and the mayor and the manager have to be on the same page for those initiatives to move forward. So, you know, I think part of the novelty here that you have to consider is we haven't clearly defined the role other than the statutory duties of what the mayor is expected to do. In the eyes of the public, the mayor will still be the mayor. The mayor is going to be the person everybody goes to solve their problem, including, I got a pothole on my street. I have, Alderman Busker told me about a nasty pit bull before the meeting. But the mayor is going to have to channel all that through the staff, starting with the city manager. So, you know, I encourage you to work at this systematically. I encourage you to maybe have a special meeting or two if you need it. I think you have hit a point, which is, have we clearly thought through what the role of the mayor is going to be? And I think that there's still some discussion to be had about that, because this goes far beyond a couple of public forums about here's the structure and here's how it works and it's going to solve all of our problems. It won't solve all your problems, but it will change the nature of how things work. So it's important for the council to understand its role, because your role will change. It's important for the mayor to understand the role, because that role will change. And so will the staff relationship to the new city manager. And so when that translates into salary, I don't know. I mean, you could say the mayor is expected to cut ribbons and come to the meetings, and we're not looking for a whole lot more. In that case, you may not want to pay that person $25,000, $20,000, whatever it is. But if you expect the mayor to translate their elected position into some type of partnership with the city manager, then they have to put in more time. And I think you're going to want to recognize that contribution. So there's some real discussion here that I think would be appropriate, not just in some civic committee in the public, but among the council, to get your head around what are your expectations for how these pieces are going to fit together. And I would encourage you to have some additional meetings, albeit, posted meetings, and to kind of talk about that in greater detail. And if you would like to have some people come from different, people who have served as city managers or served as mayor or both at the same time, to talk about that, I'm happy to help arrange it, because I've dealt with all of them. So I don't know if that answers your compensation question, but hopefully it'll give you some things to think about. Because I think compensation should reflect somewhat the position and what you expect them to do. And that's not defined right here, right now.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Miller.
Attorney Phillips, can we see before next week what the job descriptions are by state statute that we already know is set, and how we would work with that? And, I appreciate Alderperson Brashaw's comments, because, 1 week we don't have a whole lot, and the next week it's like, I don't have enough time in the day. So, I think a public servant is a public servant, whether you're sitting in this chair or that chair. So you do what you got to do is kind of my take on it.
Attorney Phillips, is there a framework that's established for a city manager council form of government that could be offered as a framework?
Yes.
Without getting into the procedural weeds or the statute, I think that we could at least see what where the starting point is, and then given our home rule authority and the will of the council, we can expand, contract based off of that. But, my view would be just to keep this simple, and because we don't know the outcome, rather than spending, several meetings on this and a lot of time, is that we would set the salaries based off of the established framework, and then we can move on it from there. Because I think that if we're going to go down that route, we're going to spend a lot of time on something that may not happen. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Any additional comments, questions? All right. Moving on to item 11. I will start the conversation on that. There's a lot of moving parts that have.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I do think that we had an agreement on the council salary, but there was no motion. Does somebody want to make a motion on that?
Make a motion, we hold it as is.
Thank you. Was there a second on that?
Sorry, second.
The salary.
Yes, yes.
To hold.
We have a motion by Alderperson Clem and a second by Alderman Busker. Open for discussion.
Yeah, to hold the salary as is. The thing I guess, and City Clerk Zaravo may want to help us here on this, is the fact that now that the council is split as far as terms go, do we have to list it as, are there two separate terms, or how do we do that? Just a question, you know. I mean, do we just do it until the next election? Because as you know, Alderman McClanathan and Alderman Miller and Alderman Bradshaw are the only ones that.
I would defer to Attorney Phillips on that.
Thank
Attorney Phillips?
You have a current ordinance that says that each alderperson shall get $3,800 per year. Just that, you know, unless you change it, everybody's gonna continue to get that amount. If you wanna change it, it would only affect those persons elected at the April 4th, 2017 election. And then you'd have five aldermen getting one rate and 3 aldermen getting another. But if you don't do anything, everybody just continues at 3,800.
So probably the best move would be to withdraw that motion and just leave it the way it is.
That's true.
I mean, okay,
Yeah, I think.
we'll make a motion to keep it as is. That's fine. As I started out
For
with.
the affected seats.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Alderperson Miller.
and is that with or without that clause in it that you had mentioned? The penalty?
I think that we had a standing agreement that everybody would be compensated for the work that they did, so that 2-week period would also have similar language. Is that consensus? Alderman Busker?
Alderperson Miller, were you referring to the absentee
Yes.
clauses for the missing a meeting? For if you,
Oh, that clause. I thought you were talking about that too. Sally and I were on.
But yes, on both.
the penalty clause for missing meetings.
Yes, consensus that the penalty clause will be removed and that the salaries will stay the same and that the 2-week period will be compensated
Yes.
consistent with the other elected positions. Okay. Please. Is there any additional discussion before we take a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on to item number 11, which is the discussion of the amending the structure, the committee of the whole to council meetings. We've put forward, council committees, thank you. I've put forward a draft. We've also had some comments from Corporation Counsel or Attorney Phillips as to what that would look like. There seems to be a lot of moving parts, and I don't sense that there is a strong interest in changing this in light of all the things that are taking place. My thought would be is that, if the city manager form of government is passed, he or she would certainly want to weigh in as to what the new structure looked like. There might be too many moving parts at this point to move forward on the overall committee structure as presented. My suggestion to the council would be is that we table this particular discussion until after the results and after the next election, so we have a little bit more consistency as to what everything looks like.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Alderman McClanathan and duly seconded by Alderman Ross. And Alderman Busker to table this is to table this until after the election, so. I would love to use the word postpone, to postpone until after the election. Is there any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 12 is public comments. Any public comments?
Alderman Chesney. I don't have a public comment, but I'll drop off to each one of you aldermen. There was a review done a few years ago on the 911 thing. There's a whole lot of information in it. Don't stay up all night and read it. And probably start at page 28. That's where it gets to be more information than you, that would be more prominent to stuff. But I look forward, I believe there'll be a lot of stuff coming up, and as Mr. Geider said, and a lot of interesting things, so.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second?
Second it.
Second by Alderman Ross, first by Alderman Busker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
See you tomorrow?
Yeah, man.
All right. See you on Monday. Glad for all your words tonight.
Good night, Linda. Hey, how was the?